Dan Perry joining us, sitting from Tel Aviv. Dan, as far as most of the Western world is concerned, what is happening in Tianjin doesn't really exist. There are very few Western journalists who are there on the spot. I think CNN is there, but pretty much nobody else. There's hardly any reportage going on. It's a vacuum that pretending that it's not happening. Now, I'm not saying this is the most game-changing thing in the world. So, how are you observing what you're hearing and what is happening?
Well, I observe it on your good channel and other such Asian media. Look, it's an international convocation and it's a bit of theater. And I was at the Associated Press for about a quarter century, and frankly, these events, I mean, are photo ops, and sometimes obviously news happens as statements are made, but very rarely does it really move the needle. Plus, it's in China. China is not a free reporting environment. It's distant from most of the Western press's headquarters, and I'm not surprised that it isn't viewed as a major event. Also, remember, the SCO, it started off as the Shanghai Five. It was really about Central Asia and China and Russia. Its ambitions back in the day, about 2 decades ago, were far less than now, when what is really happening is actually, in my view, quite interesting. China, I think, is basically trying to dominate this organization, and it means to project to the U.S. that it has, a significant group of countries that constitute a third or more of the global GDP, maybe even 40% by purchasing price parity, that are willing to, in one form or another, align with it. Now, I hear Prime Minister Modi, and I understand that India is so big and so important that they don't want to be part of anyone else's bloc. But then there's the real world. And in the real world, there is a bipolar situation right now with China on the one hand and America on the other. The paradox and the source of instability comes from the fact that the leader of the Western Bloc, the United States, historically doesn't seem to want to be that anymore under this particular president, who views the entirety of geopolitics and of global trade as a zero-sum game based on bilateral relations and not blocks. So that is why you have a tremendous vacuum with the Europeans in particular, very much distraught and confused about what to do and essentially waiting out Donald Trump, hoping for better by by 2028. Whether that will come in the form of J.D. Vance or a Democrat or something else, we shall see. And I think everyone, including India, is somewhat biding their time and signaling to world markets and to Washington that there is a price to be paid for what you before called the brashness. I would frankly call the reckless absurdity coming out of Washington. And that clearly is very acute when you look at U.S.-India trade relations, where India just absorbed this just body slam of 50% tariffs in some cases. There is a narrative that
Okay.
says that India is buying way too much Russian oil and propping up that war machine. But of course, India can claim that the previous government in the U.S. had signaled that it was okay because it will stabilize markets and create some kind of implausible deniability about the sanctions, non-sanctions regime on Russia. It's complex.
Yeah.
I think India. Go
Well,
ahead.
you're sitting in Tel Aviv, and you understand complexity. It is complex, but it has become also incomprehensible, the logic coming out of Washington, because it's not India. The Canadians are equally frustrated. So are the Mexicans. So are the Europeans, because we were told that the European Trump deal has already happened. But then last night we were told that might be more tariffs and counter tariffs over digital laws. The Japanese are flummoxed. The Aussies are flummoxed. But we've just been told the reasonable response is to call the people who've been running this, from Osama bin Laden to Mohammed Atta and all the others, and have dinner with them and ask them to endorse you for a Nobel Peace Prize. It's an in principled issue here in India. How do we get past that? Because the tariff conversation I can still digest.
I have to tell you, the tariff conversation to me is even more undigestible because the conflict between India and Pakistan and between the Muslim world, the extreme manifestation of Islamism and jihadism and the rest of humanity really is just a cataclysm and it belongs in its own box. The tariff issue is plainly nonsensical. I understand trying to protect a particular industry, that you consider to be a national imperative, that's reasonable. But other than that, every economist on the planet will tell you that blanket tariffs against countries are a bad idea. And in particular, someone should really tell Trump in a way that he understands, like focus his mind and give him a cheeseburger and have him understand that the tariffs are paid generally by the U.S. consumer. He seems to believe it's India that's going to pay the tariffs. It's beyond all belief. So, look, you discussed the arc of history before. I think the arc of history can tolerate, can survive a blip. And frankly, as a person who understands that the Bretton Woods system that you before were suggesting is completely no longer relevant, the post World War II order that America led has value and is not completely defunct. And you know, the G7, for example, was meant to be more than an economic a cooperation society, if even that. It reflected something political because Trump's nonsensical tariff policies and his dismissal of NATO and his indifference to the rules-based global order that brought so much prosperity to the entire planet in the post-colonial era, including China and India. That is not shared by the U.S. population at large. The reasons why Trump squeaked into power twice now, once while losing the popular vote, are very specific to American politics and to the immigration fiasco on the southern border and to the never-ending circus over wokeness.
But I have to ask you, so as a negotiating tactic, to be very aggressive in the get-go and, and threaten all sorts of things, we've seen a dose of this before. So and the Chinese have seen it, everybody's seen it. So that's one thing, but this is no longer a tactic. It's almost become consistent policy. We are now several months into this. This is not something new that started and went over in a couple of months. He's going to fight it in the Supreme Court. In the US, he probably will win, which means that we are being told America can run primarily only on executive orders and you can permanently bypass the Senate and Congress perpetually. Precedents for the Americans to worry about, but we are now nearing the end of the year here. September is here, and this doesn't seem like it's going away. And 3 years of this will do a lot of damage. There's no running away from that.
Can I just reply for a second?
Yes, please.
I understand the skepticism about the Supreme Court because they really are looking like a bunch of lemmings who are prepared to say that the president has immunity in all things. But sometimes they can surprise. Even this Supreme Court, the U.S. president can only impose tariffs on the basis of a national emergency. And it is very difficult to see how any court, even one that is basically in the pocket of Trump, could possibly claim that there is a national emergency between the U.S. and every nation on earth, which were the recipients to one degree or another of the tariffs. It is so patently nonsensical, so spectacularly unpopular, and so clearly damaging to America's own economy, so obviously based on a complete misunderstanding of what tariffs are and what world trade is, that, you know what, I am not starry-eyed about the Supreme Court of the U.S. right now, but I have to think that there will be an intelligent discussion and a way will be found to ease off of most of the tariffs, except for the ones that can be justified on a basis of a true emergency or a true defensible need to protect a particular industry and so forth. And if not that, I don't know, maybe Modi can say something nice about Melania, and that might make the tariffs go away.
That almost sounds laughably petulant, but it isn't, because I was very keenly watching the head of Apple, Tim Cook, come to the White House, and this entire presentation happened about this very exclusive gift that he's gotten manufactured for the president.